Plaintiff Kelly Avila says the defendant is her former neighbor, and her children have a history of being disruptive in the neighborhood. Kelly claims the defendant does not supervise her children, and she's suing her today because her 10-year-old son broke into Kelly's home and robbed her. Defendant Latricia Williams says this all started last summer after she confronted Kelly about yelling and cursing at her daughter. Latricia admits that her son, along with 4 other boys, broke into Kelly's home, but she insists her son returned everything he took. She's countersuing for harassment.
Start with you.
Latricia is my former neighbor. Her 10-year-old son broke into my home. They've had a history of being disruptive in the neighborhood.
They whom?
Her children.
How many children does she have?
I believe I only know of 2, possibly 3 of them that are hers.
What is the history? Give me the history.
They run the streets all towards night, day. There's no supervision whatsoever. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, these kids are outside running around. Her older son would hide next to the bushes next to my girlfriend's house and smoke cigarettes and marijuana.
How old are those 2?
He's about 14.
And the other?
She has, I'm not really sure, she has to be around 12-ish possibly, but she would dance provocatively on the corner that's known for prostitution in the neighborhood. There was also an incident. I was sitting on the porch about 1 o'clock in the morning during the summer with a friend of mine, and Trish was on the porch with a male from the neighborhood performing oral sex on him, so it doesn't really surprise me that the children are...
You're alleging she was doing it?
Oh, I saw her.
At 1 in the morning?
Yes.
Outside?
Outside on the porch?
An abandoned porch of abandoned house.
She was outside on the porch and you was outside on your porch?
Yes. There's a street.
So if y'all doing the same thing, how could you see her?
No, I was not doing it.
You said you were on the porch.
I was on my
and
porch.
She was on her porch.
She was on a next door's porch. There's a street light that kind of goes on and off, and the street light popped on, and there she was.
Oh. What were you doing on the porch?
I was conversing with a friend. It was a nice summer night.
What was she doing on the porch? Same thing as you?
Know what she's talking about.
Oh, you don't know? Okay. This didn't happen?
No, sir.
All right. Let me hear from you, ma'am. Give me some background.
Okay, first of all, this all started last summer. Before the incident even happened, my daughter was walking down the street one day and it was not 1 o'clock in the morning. I work. My kids are at the babysitters during the day. I have 5 children. Right. 3 of them are at daycare while I'm at work. The other 2, the 15-year-old and the 14-year-old, are at home. I'm home before 12 o'clock. My kids are in the house before I even get home. So that's why. The incident,
you don't hear complaints from anyone regarding your children?
Yes, there have been complaints about my older son, but nothing about my daughters. The 14-year-old,
yes.
He was caught smoking cigarettes. I don't know about marijuana, but he was caught smoking cigarettes on the porch next door. How do they do in school? The 14-year-old is not doing too good in school right now.
How about the 12-year-old?
The 12-year-old, she's doing good in school.
Okay, you have 5. What about the other 3?
The 3 girls are all doing good in school.
So you only have 1 child that's not doing well in school?
Yes.
All right.
Again,
and either of them received any suspensions?
Yes.
How many?
2 of them.
For what problem?
The 14-year-old was suspended for being disruptive in class, and the 10-year-old is suspended because he has ADHD, and he doesn't sit still in class and runs out the classroom and things like that.
Is he in counseling?
Yes, he's in counseling. I've had him in counseling for 3 years now. He's on medication. Okay. I take him to counseling 3 times a week, and he doesn't leave my sight other than every once in a while I have no choice but to leave him home with my daughter. This is the one she alleges burglarized her home? Yes, sir. Again, this all started...
Ma'am, do you have any evidence that the other children are problematic in the neighborhood?
Well, I do have a statement from my friend, my sister-in-law, just describing
Does she
the
live
incident
in the
the day of
neighborhood?
She does. She lives 3 houses down from her.
What is she saying about the children?
Oh, she's had problems. Like she said, this has been going on since last summer. They would go in her backyard and steal her son's basketball hoop, and this was going back and forth.
Did she confront her about it?
Yes, and
what did she say?
She said the same thing she told me when I confronted her about her children's behavior, that she has no control over these children. She knows they're bad, and she wishes that CPS would.
Which of the children stole the basketball?
It was the older one, the 14-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Did they speak to you about it, ma'am?
No, she's lying.
This is the first time you've ever heard that your 14-year-old was involved with stealing a basketball hoop?
Yes, this is the first time I've heard of it.
All right. And you say your sister approached her about it, your sister-in-law?
Yes, she did.
And does she make mention of that in the letter?
No, she didn't, because her statement is pertaining to this situation only.
The situation of burglarizing the house?
Of my home, yes.
So you have nothing else from anyone
No.
saying that any of her children did anything else?
No, I did not.
Even though you say they're problematic to the whole neighborhood.
Well, all I know is the situations that I've
let's
endured
get to
with
the
them.
stolen property.
It was my son and 4 others' children.
Okay.
It was not just my son. There was other kids from the neighborhood
All right.
that were involved in this. The things that my son had, he gave back to her. First of all,
What
I
were
believe
those?
that she sued a couple of video games and a couple of toys.
Okay.
First of all, I believe that she's suing me because she's saying that someone approached me. No one ever approached me. I approached her last summer.
About what?
Because my daughter came, when I
About
came
what?
home from work, she was disrespecting my daughter. I came home from work and my daughter said that she was yelling at her and cussing at her. So the next day she walked by my house and my daughter said, "Mom, that's the lady that was yelling at me." So I approached her and I told her, I don't know what happened. I wasn't here. I can't say. If she had a problem with my children, not to be yelling and cussing at them because they're still kids, to come knock on my door and let me know. I do discipline my kids. She never did any. A couple months later, it was the same thing. She was yelling and cussing at him again. And then the day of the incident, I didn't know what happened. The police knocked on my door.
Where was your child? You didn't know where your child was?
That morning, I had an appointment. I left to go do something. He was home with my daughter. My daughter said he was
Your
outside.
daughter, who was how old?
She's 15.
Go ahead.
He was at home with her. When I got home, she said he got away free. He ran out the house on her. When she found him, she got him back in the house. By that time, I got back home. He was already in the house. He never said anything. Nobody else ever said anything. Nobody knew what had happened until later on that night. The police knocked on my door. They questioned my son. I went in the house. I looked around. There was a couple video games that I know didn't belong to my son and a couple of toy guns. I gave that to the police. I made my son tell the police what happened, and we went to the other
You want to have a
children's
police
houses.
report?
I do.
Let's see it, please.
We went to the other children's houses that was involved in it where they recovered more property. I never talked to the plaintiff. I talked to her sister and I told her that I would pay for a window, but that's all I'm responsible for because my son gave back everything that he had.
All right, ma'am. What items do you allege her son failed to return?
Well, as a whole, everything that was taken were 2 Xboxes, a PlayStation 2, a DSi, a PSP, a DS Lite, about 200 video games, 10 Nerf guns.
Have not been returned?
No, a whole entire jewelry
What
box.
did you get?
I got back 1 broken Xbox and 2 Game Boy Advances and less than 10 video games, which some of them cases were even empty.
And why do you believe her child has all of those as opposed to some of the others?
Well, at the time, like I said, I don't even know whose children belong to her. There's so much mayhem going in that house. The
Okay,
police are
so
there 3-4 days
you
a
were
week.
only familiar with one person that broke into your house.
Yes, I was.
You didn't find out who the other children were.
I also have a statement
Now,
here.
ma'am, please answer my question. Did you
No, I
find
didn't.
out who the other children were?
No, I did not.
Don't start shaking your head and looking at me like that. That's contemptuous. I'll throw you out. You understand?
I understand.
All right. Now make sure you do. Because all this telling me how she runs her household and all this harassing her children, which I believe, the way you talk, your posture, everything about you smacks of being biased against her and her children. You can't prove to me that all these items are still in her house, possessed by her son, or that her son otherwise disposed of them. As you've said, several people were involved. You don't know. So therefore, you wouldn't know what her son has because there's several people involved and you don't even know the people. So let's get to your counterclaim for $1,000.
Again, that's for harassment. She's, as you hear her, she's standing over there. Half the stuff she's making up. My kids, my sons are troublemakers. My daughters are not. My daughters do not get in any trouble. She, on several occasions, have cussed at my kids, yelled at my kids. She said that my youngest daughter, not my youngest daughter, my middle daughter, disrespected her. She said that my daughter was yelling at her. I went home and I disciplined my daughter. I didn't care why. My daughter has no business disrespecting an adult, period. I don't care what happened. I don't care what the situation was.
How did you
My kids
discipline her?
don't disrespect her.
How did you discipline her?
I took her phone from her. She was on punishment. She wasn't allowed outside.
All right. And I'm not going to conclude that you're entitled to a judgment for harassment unless she did something else other than curse your daughter. Did she do anything else that I missed?
No, besides
All right.
cursing
That
him out
doesn't
and
amount
threatening my
to
son.
a harassment charge. Secondly, and you haven't quite proven it either. Secondly, ma'am, the law in many states, but not all, is that parents are automatically responsible for the acts of their minor children. I think that's unfair to hold the parent responsible under every circumstance. The other states require that the parent be found negligent in supervising the children. And that means if the parent knows that the children have problems and they fail to address those problems, then the parent should be held liable for the things that occur. However, if the parent has supervised them properly, such as had them diagnosed, if they've had troubles, then the parent tries to get them counseling, and the parent takes them to counseling 3 times a week, and the parent has them medicated and tries to supervise them best they can. They do all of that, and the child still breaks away at some point and commits a crime, then that is not negligent supervision. That is, she has done the best she can, and as many other mothers do, when they do the absolute best that they can, they punish that child every time. They keep their eye on that child every time. They enroll that child in after-school programs. They enroll that child in sports activity. They take that child to church 3 times a week. After they've done all of that, I think it is unfair to hold that parent responsible. So I'm going to allow you to return back to court and sue the child. And then when you sue the child will be required to pay as an adult. Once that child achieves the age of adulthood, that child will be liable to pay you. Case dismissed, sue the child, and then get your recovery there. Yours is dismissed also. Have a good day.
I do apologize for what happened to her. If she wants me to pay for the window, I would be more than happy to do that. But my son returned everything that he took, and she is very disrespectful to children. My daughter had absolutely nothing to do with the situation. She cussed my daughter out, called her a fat.
Actually, that name was for you, not your daughter. And if you were around and supervising your children, you would have saw how she was threatening me and cussing at me in front of my children. And did she also tell you how they ketchup and mustard the back of my car in 90-degree weather? They didn't tell you that either, did they? But you don't know that because you don't supervise your children. You need to get it together. End of story.
I work.
I work
and
too.
My kids
I'm going 12 hours a day. I'm a single mother with 3 kids, and my kids don't act like that. My kids are your kids' age, and they act their age.
And so
get it
am I.
together.